Hey guys, tonight we're doing something bold, something no mortal has ever done and lived to talk about. We're going up Mount Olympus, not just to visit, no. You're going to stroll right in, like you were invited to a divine brunch, and sit in on the daily chaos of the most powerful gods in Greek mythology. And let me tell you, it's not all clouds and harp music. There's ego, thunder, sibling drama, and an endless debate about who gets the last ambrosia cupcake. You're the fly on the marble wall. Just don't get zapped by Zeus's lightning while you're at it. Seriously, don't stand near anything metal. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here, and drop a comment with where you're watching from and what time it is. I want to know if you're sneaking this in at 2 AM under the covers or walking your dog at sunset. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. Lan. You step carefully along the winding path up the mountain. The air thins, and your skin tingles not from cold, but from something ancient brushing against you like whispers in the wind. Each stone beneath your feet hums with the weight of ancient oaths, forgotten wars, and thunder that still echoes in the sky. Mount Olympus isn't what you imagined. No golden palace, no choir of angels. Instead, it opens into a vast space made of clouds hardened into marble platforms, light radiating from nowhere and everywhere. The air feels electric, like a charger half plugged into reality, and there they are, the 5 gods, sitting, waiting, radiating enough power to fry your nervous system into toast. Zeus lounges at the center, fingers crackling with silent lightning, as if he's considering whether or not to turn you into a puff of irony. Poseidon leans back on a throne made of swirling water, absent-mindedly flicking droplets that turn into tiny fish before they hit the ground. Hades lurks in the shadowy edge of the gathering, arms crossed, eyes distant, probably thinking about taxes in the underworld or who last left Cerberus on walk duty. Athena sits upright, polished spear tapping rhythmically on the floor like an impatient schoolteacher. And Ares? He's doing one-handed push-ups, for fun, shirtless, obviously. You try to shift your weight, and instantly 5 pairs of eyes land on you. Yes, you, the human. The mortal's still breathing, Athena notes, eyebrow raised. Interesting. Maybe it's one of Gaia's tests, Poseidon mutters, lazily spinning a whirlpool around his ankle. Zeus doesn't speak, he just looks at you, eyes like twin thunderstorms paused in mid-strike. You want to run, but your legs are frozen not from fear, but from the sheer weight of attention. Hades grumbles, voice low and dry like stone grinding on stone. It hears everything. You nod. Yep, you hear everything, including the tiny burp Ares let slip from all that fermented nectar he chugged earlier. And strangely, you're not scared. Maybe it's the altitude, maybe it's the way the clouds cradle your body like velvet, or maybe it's because you're starting to see the truth. The gods? They're not so different from a very dysfunctional family trying to plan a vacation together. One's late, one's angry, one's judging everyone else, and someone definitely brought a trident to the meeting for no reason. Athena gestures. If you've got the guts to climb all the way here, she says, then sit and listen. We're deciding the future of the cosmos. Or at least, Ares grins, wiping sweat off his bicep, what we're having for lunch. Zeus smirks, a thundercloud purrs. You sit. Somehow, the stone floor beneath you is warm, like it remembers sunlight even in the clouds. Your heart slows not from calm, but because it knows instinctively, this is not just a story. This is history, alive, breathing, wearing ancient sandals. The gods begin to speak, not in order of rank, but in order of who's caused the most recent celestial mess. And they start, of course, with the man at the center, the one who clutches lightning like a nervous tick, the one whose name thunder whispers across every mountain. Zeus. You don't remember blinking, but suddenly, everything is brighter. The sky above Olympus pulses not with sun or moonlight, but with the raw shimmer of storm. And in the middle of it all, Zeus leans forward, slowly, like a skyscraper tilting toward you. His beard is thick with curls of storm cloud, and every strand of hair seems to hum with static. You get the distinct sense that if you sneeze right now, you might ignite the atmosphere. But instead of shouting or hurling lightning to make his point, Zeus just sighs. "You humans," he says, "always think the world began with a bang. It didn't, it began with silence. And then I spoke." That voice? It's not loud, but it reverberates inside your chest cavity like surround sound. Your bones are clapping in applause even if the rest of you is panicking slightly. Zeus gestures and a crackle of light whips through the air, forming a moving tableau in the clouds. You see his story, your story, playing out above like a divine movie trailer. But this one doesn't start with inner world. It starts with a baby. "You know Kronos?" he asks. "My father? The one who swallowed all his children like vitamins?" You nod slowly. "Well, I didn't enjoy being digested, so long story short, I didn't stay swallowed." That's an understatement. What actually happens in the misty image above is wild. You see baby Zeus saved by a mountain nymph, raised in secret, fed on honey and goat milk, and taught to hurl pebbles like meteors. Then, one by one, he tricks Kronos, makes him throw up all the other gods. Poseidon, Hades, Hestia, Hera, Demeter and boom, new god squad unlocked. You glance at him. "So, you're the leader of the gods?" He smiles, slow as thunder rolling in from the east. "I'm not the leader because I'm the strongest. I'm the leader because I saw the chessboard before anyone else saw the pieces. That and the lightning helps." Suddenly he lifts his hand and a bolt zaps from his palm, not at you thankfully, but into the air. The cloud movie shifts to battle's Titanomachy. You see him battling the Titans, hurling bolts like dodgeballs, riding a flying eagle, shouting orders like a divine general with ADHD. You almost expect him to yell YOLO mid-battle. But no, he's actually pretty focused. "We didn't win because we were righteous," he mutters. "We won because I knew when to strike and when to wait." You're starting to get it now. Zeus isn't just a thunder god. He's the god of timing. The god of knowing exactly when to interrupt your sentence with boom. Yeah, like that. The sky rips open, not because it's raining, but because he wants to make a point. A tree miles away bursts into flames. Ares cheers softly. "People think I'm impulsive," Zeus continues. "They call me a womanizer, a cheater, a warmonger. But they forget I am the balance, the storm and the calm, the consequence and the joke. You hesitate, so you're always in control." His left eye twitches, just slightly. "No one is always in control, but I am the one who pretends best." Ah, there it is. The crack in the marble. You realize Zeus's power isn't just in his bolts, it's in his bluff, his presence, his image. He's the boss because he plays the part so hard everyone else forgets to challenge him. Except Hera. But we'll get to her, eventually. He turns back toward the horizon, looking not at the clouds but through them. "It's not easy being the top god," he says. "Everyone wants your favor, or your head, or both." "And the others?" you ask. "Do they follow you?" He chuckles. "They follow the lightning until it strikes them." There's a moment of silence. You almost expect a joke, a snarky line, but instead, Zeus softens just a little. "I once tried to step away," he admits. "Let the world run itself. Chaos followed. So I returned, because someone has to hold the sky." You look up. For the first time you notice it, the dome of the heavens above, curved and glowing faintly blue, as if held up by invisible hands. Number by his hands. And suddenly, you understand why he can't stop, why he can't relax, why every muscle in his body is half flexed, even when he smiles. Because when you're Zeus, if you stop holding up the world, it falls. Then, just like that, the atmosphere lightens. Literally, he waves his hand, and the sky dims from electric storm to a mellow blue. The tension in your shoulders eases. "That's enough of me," Zeus says, already reclining again. "Let's see what my brother's been sulking about this time." And with a gesture toward the C-shaped throne on the far side of the circle, you feel the ground beneath you ripple. Up next, the moody god of all things salty and wet. Poseidon. You barely finish blinking before the sky darkens with mist. The clouds that made up the floor of Olympus begin to churn, slowly giving way to crashing waves below. Salt sharpens the air. Somewhere in the distance, a seagull screams like it just lost a bet, and then you feel it, the pulse beneath your feet, like the ocean is breathing, no, sulking. Poseidon's presence rolls in before he even speaks. He doesn't need theatrics, is the theatrics. His throne is less a chair and more a tide pool elevated by coral, seashells, and some deeply confused octopus curled around its base. He leans back, trident casually across his lap, like a surfer king who's seen too many tsunamis to be impressed by anyone's tiny emotional meltdown. "I heard what you said," Poseidon mutters, side-eyeing Zeus without turning his head. Zeus grins. "Then you heard I was generous." Poseidon snorts and the sea below you bucks slightly, like it agrees with him. "Generous? You gave me a kingdom no one can breathe in and expected gratitude. You clear your throat, bad idea. The air's basically seawater now, and try to focus, because now you're the one under Poseidon's gaze." His eyes are dark green, like algae stirred in a storm, and somewhere in there you can see whirlpools, real ones, spinning. "Let me guess," he says, voice smooth but heavy. "You think I'm just the guy with the fishtail and mood swings?" You shrug. That would not be entirely inaccurate. He sighs. Typical. The air shimmers, and once again the gods conjure the sky screen. This time it's Poseidon's turn to narrate. You watch as his story forms, the birth, the war, the drowning of titans in oceans he raised out of nothing, and then the aftermath, the division of the world. "I didn't want the sea," he says. "I wanted the sky. I wanted freedom." You glance at Zeus. He says nothing, but one corner of his mouth twitches. That older brother smugness twitch. Poseidon continues. "But no. Sky to Zeus, underworld to Hades, and me?" He gestures wide. "The sea, full of monsters, full of sailors praying they don't die, and all of it wet." You resist the urge to point out that he is, in fact, the god of the sea and has been for quite some time, but he reads your expression anyway. "I made it mine," he says, more to himself than to you. "Tamed the waves, built palaces beneath the Mariana Trench, invented horses. I mean, you're welcome." "Wait, hold up. You invented horses?" you ask. He smirks. "Well, Athena tried to make the olive tree sexy. I gave mortals thundering beauty." He leans forward. "Guess who won that contest?" Spoiler, it wasn't him, but you wisely say nothing. Poseidon shifts, his sea-wet robes swirl like kelp in a current. "I get blamed for storms," he says. "Shipwrecks, floods, sinkholes, sea monsters, but no one thanks me when the tide brings in fish or when the shore holds firm." He clenches his trident, and in the distance, a rogue wave slaps the sky like someone just insulted his beard. "My emotions are the ocean," he murmurs. "Calm until they're not, deep until they drown you." You realize something then. Poseidon isn't angry because he's petty. He's angry because he feels everything. All the pain, the hope, the prayers shouted into waves by people who never learned to swim. It's overwhelming, and there's no off switch. He exhales, and the sea settles. "I've watched empires rise from the sand," he says, "and I've washed them away just the same." His gaze lifts to meet yours. "The ocean doesn't forget. Neither do I." That sentence sits in the air like a fog you can't quite breathe through. He leans back, trident resting again, and adds, "Besides, someone's got to keep Kraken fed." You really hope that was a joke. A single raindrop lands on your cheek, cold, sharp, like punctuation. Poseidon looks skyward, bored. "Tell them about my little brother," he says dryly, "the one who got stuck with the family basement." He means Hades. And as he says it, the mist begins to darken, twist, and pull downward. The clouds shift again, the temperature drops like someone opened a cellar door to the edge of the afterlife. Up next, the King of Shadows, the CEO of Gloom, the one whose idea of interior design is 50 Shades of Despair. Hades. The seafoam mist curls away, and in its place, darkness spreads, not the chaotic, screaming kind, but a smooth velvet shadow that hushes everything it touches. The kind of dark that doesn't ask for permission, the kind that makes your breath slow, your heartbeat soften, like you've stepped into a cathedral where grief is the only prayer. You feel the shift before you see him. Hades doesn't enter the space. He's already there. He always was, leaning against a pillar of obsidian, arms crossed, expression carved from stillness itself. The kind of presence that doesn't demand attention because silence is the demand. No theatrics, no trident, no lightning, just that cold, impossible calm. "Well," he says, voice low and even, "you've heard from the sky and the sea. Shall we descend?" You don't answer, you just follow, or maybe fall. The clouds beneath you peel away, revealing a passage of shadow spiraling downward. It doesn't feel like falling, it feels like sinking into a memory, a funeral memory. One with no music, only the sound of your own shoes on stone. Hades walks ahead, hands in his dark cloak. The folds move like smoke around him, no wind, just motion. "You people think I'm death," he says quietly. "You tell stories where I steal maidens, hoard riches, whisper curses into the bones of the earth." He pauses, glancing back at you. "But I am not death." He stops. "I am what comes after." The path opens into a great cavern-black stone walls lit faintly by torches that burn with blue fire. Above, a ceiling painted with constellations that no longer exist. Below, a river winds through the stone like a silver vein. Styx, you can hear it. Not water vows flowing, promises too deep to break. "I don't kill," he continues, walking slowly along the river's edge. "Mortals do that well enough on their own. I simply collect." That should sound menacing. It doesn't. It just sounds true. He lifts one hand, and the shadows obey. They form figures flickering memories of kings and warriors, lovers and traitors, children and queens. All drifting silently through the cavern, like thoughts you meant to forget but never quite could. You ask, softly, "Is it hard, carrying all of them?" He doesn't answer for a long time. Then, "Yes." One word, full of centuries. "I wasn't given the underworld because I wanted it," Hades says. "I drew the short straw, sky, sea, shadow, but I made it mine." And he did. You see it now beyond the gloom, the vast beauty of his realm, fields of golden wheat for souls who lived well, darker corners for those who didn't. A palace, not gleaming like Olympus, but solid, real, grounded in truth. "This place," he says, gesturing, "is where lies go to die. No masks, no noise, just memory." He pauses again, watching a shade drift by. "Do you know why the other gods fear me?" he asks. You shake your head. "Because they live in the present. I rule everything they pretend doesn't exist." You look at him differently now. This isn't a villain. This isn't a monster. This is the god who picks up the pieces when the show is over, who listens when no one else will, who guards the boundary between pain and peace. But don't get too comfortable. He sees it on your face. "I am not kind," he says. "I am fair." A breeze moves past you, cold and final. You're not sure where it came from, maybe from someone just arriving at the river. Hades glances upward. "They're waiting for you back on Olympus," he says, with just a hint of amusement. "Can't leave my brothers unsupervised for long. They start throwing meteors." Before you can thank him, the shadows rise again, gently lifting you from the stone floor. You ascend, not flying, not floating, just rising, like smoke returning to the stars. Back in the circle, the gods are waiting. Ares is tossing a spear into the air like a bored teenager. Athena is polishing the edge of her wisdom. Zeus is pretending he didn't almost start a storm. Poseidon is wet, still. But all eyes turn to the next voice. Steel, strategy, clarity sharper than any sword. Athena. The first thing you hear isn't a voice, it's the clean metallic ring of bronze on stone. Tap, tap, tap. Rhythmic, precise, like a ticking clock made of discipline. Athena sits with her legs crossed, spear resting across her knees, posture so upright it could shame a spine model. She's not lounging like Zeus, brooding like Hades, or flexing like Ares. She's still, and yet you get the sense that if a war broke out right now, she wouldn't stand up to fight, she'd already be 10 moves ahead, winning. Her armor is etched in silver and wisdom, not glamour. Her owl rests silently on her shoulder, eyes glowing faintly like it's been awake since the concept of thought was invented. "So," she says, glancing at you with the cool interest of someone evaluating a battlefield. "You've met the loud ones. Now let's talk about the reason they still have functioning civilizations." You nod carefully. She doesn't smile, but she approves. Probably. Athena doesn't bother conjuring swirling clouds or glowing illusions, she simply tells, and her words paint pictures better than Poseidon's waves or Zeus's fireworks ever could. I wasn't born, she begins, I emerged. You see at Zeus's forehead splitting open like a thunderstruck mountain, and Athena stepping out, fully armored, fully formed, eyes like strategy incarnate. No childhood, she continues, no lullabies, just clarity. Her tone isn't bitter, it's matter of fact, like she's reciting the blueprint of her soul. I am the goddess of wisdom, yes, but not the soft academic kind with dusty scrolls and sleepy lectures. She leans forward, eyes sharp. I'm the wisdom that builds cities, that architects bridges, that turns chaos into structure. You feel the floor shift beneath you not from magic, but from sheer certainty. I taught humans how to weave, how to measure, how to govern, she says. While Ares was busy glorifying war, I was shaping victory. Ares scoffs from across the circle. Yeah? And who charges in first when the shield wall breaks? Athena doesn't look at him, the one who planned for it. Ouch. If mic drops existed in Olympus, this would be one. But Athena isn't smug, she continues, expression calm but unwavering. People forget, she says, that logic can be cruel, that order can be sharp. They think wisdom is soft, but in war, softness gets crushed. She stands, not suddenly, just deliberately. And now you see her full height not towering, but commanding, like a chess queen with a sword strapped to her back and a PhD in how to dismantle your empire using only 5 moves and a strategic supply chain. I've turned back armies with strategy. I've whispered into generals' dreams and rewritten the fate of empires. And I've done it all while the other gods bickered over trophies. You glance at her spear polished, but clearly used. She notices. This, she says, lifting it slightly, not for show. Every line on this blade is a decision I didn't want to make, but I made it anyway. She turns her gaze on you, and for the briefest moment, you feel completely transparent, like your brain is a scroll, and she's reading it upside down, backwards, and in 4 dimensions. Wisdom, she says, is not about knowing what's right. It's knowing what's necessary and still choosing to carry the weight. Silence. The owl blinks, and you realize she's not just a goddess of intellect. She's the protector of burdened minds, of lonely leaders, of people who stay up at night calculating how to keep others alive. You whisper, "Do you have a rest?" Athena answers with a tilt of her head. Rest is for those who trust others to think. Oof. Before you can respond, the air changes again, this time faster, hotter, heavier. Athena sighs and sits back down. He's next, isn't he? Zeus chuckles. Poseidon groans. Even Hades raises an eyebrow. Because there's only one god left in this circle of chaos and cosmos who doesn't wait for introduction. Ares. You hear him before you see him. Not words movement, leather creaking, a boot slamming down, the soft clink of metal armor shifting like a rhythm section in a rock band made entirely of weapons. Then he stands. And yep, that's Ares. He doesn't walk into the center of Olympus, he struts, shirtless obviously, his torso glistening like he's been doing push-ups in oil just to stay warm, muscles that could probably bench press a chariot. Scars that look more like badges than wounds. A sword slung across his back with the casual ease of someone who uses it more often than a fork. He grins at you, all teeth and zero apology. So, he says, flexing a shoulder like it offended him, you want to know what I'm the god of? Before you can answer, he raises a fist and slams it into the ground. The clouds recoil like startled sheep. The floor cracks beneath his knuckles. Somewhere, you're pretty sure a mountain just flinched. I'm not the god of war because I'm good at it, he growls. I'm the god of war because I am it. Charming. Ares doesn't bother with fancy speeches or misty sky projections. His stories are carved into the way he moves, the way he dominates space. Every god you've met so far has had a style. Ares is a style. 1 part chaos, 1 part rage, 3 parts shirtless screaming. He paces as he speaks, like a wolf who never learned to sit. You people talk about honor, he scoffs. Strategy, defense, heroic sacrifice. He turns to you, eyes wild and golden like a lion in permanent attack mode. Let me tell you what war really is. It's blood in your mouth and mud in your lungs. It's charging forward when everything inside you says run. He stops in front of you, just close enough that you can smell the iron on him. Or maybe that's just blood, it's hard to tell. But you keep going, he says, because that's the only way you make it out, and sometimes you don't. You swallow, loudly. Ares chuckles. Yeah, that's fear, that's real. He leans back now, more relaxed, as if he enjoys the moment just after terrifying people. You know, for fun. They don't like me up here, he says, jerking a thumb toward the other gods. Athena thinks I'm dumb, Hades thinks I'm a brute, Zeus wishes I'd go 2 minutes without punching something. In the corner, Zeus sighs. Athena rolls her eyes. Hades remains perfectly still. But when the battle starts, Ares continues, guess who they call? You don't answer, you don't need to. He flexes his hand like he's remembering the grip of a shield. I don't fight for love, I don't fight for glory, I fight because it's beautiful. That moment when the noise disappears and all that's left is you, your blade, and the next heartbeat, that's where I live. His voice lowers. That's where I'm free. And just like that, something shifts in you. You expected a meathead with a sword and anger issues. What you got was someone heartbreakingly human. Because beneath the fury and the battle cries, Ares is something more terrifying than a god. He's a soldier, the kind who never got to stop marching. I didn't choose war, he says softly, but I made it mine, because if I don't own it, it owns me. A long silence follows. Then, in typical Ares fashion, he ruins the emotional moment by casually throwing a spear up into the sky like a javelin and yelling, "Heads up." Everyone flinches, except Athena. She catches it without blinking. Ares smirks. She always ruins my dramatic exits. You're still catching your breath when a new tone cuts through the space, not thunder, not waves, not steel, but the sharp click of heels. Measured, elegant, dangerous. And then you hear her voice. Cool, calm, controlled. Isn't this charming? Hera says. The boys and their toys. Click, click, click. Hera's footsteps slice through the tension like a scalpel through silk. She doesn't raise her voice, she doesn't throw lightning, she doesn't need to. Every god in the circle straightens a little when she arrives 7 Zeus. Especially Zeus. She moves like someone who built the throne room and now merely tolerates the current tenants. Her gown trails behind her, shimmering like it's woven from promises people regret breaking. Her gaze is sharp enough to slice Olympus in half, and you have a sudden, violent urge to apologize for everything you've ever done, even the stuff that technically hasn't happened yet. Still measuring power in explosions and body counts? She says, circling the group like a panther in pearls. No wonder the mortals are still confused. No one interrupts her, not even Ares, and Ares interrupts lightning. She stops near Zeus and raises an eyebrow. You let them bicker in front of a mortal? Zeus shrugs like a teenager caught hosting a house party while his parents were out. They were, illustrating. She says. That's it. One sound, but it hits harder than Poseidon's waves. Hera turns to you. So, you've heard their stories. The thunder, the sea, the dead, the war, the wisdom. She adds finger quotes around wisdom, and Athena's spear flexes with indignation. But do you know what real power is? You don't answer. You're not sure if this is a rhetorical question or a trap. Probably both. Real power, she continues, isn't loud. It doesn't explode or roar or rip open mountains. It binds, it weaves, it makes empires possible and keeps them intact when the gods go off playing with fire. She pauses. Her voice lowers not in volume, but in temperature. I am the goddess of marriage, of family, of unity, and that is exactly why they fear me. You glance around. Zeus isn't smiling anymore. Hera steps closer. Because you can break a mountain and I'll build a city from its stones. You can start a war and I'll be the reason soldiers return home. I don't need weapons. She leans in. I have memory, oaths, and consequence. You realize something then? Every god here has power. But Hera? She has leverage. She's the one who remembers, the one who decides who stays in the story and who gets written out. You think I just sit on Olympus and nag? She says. I've watched civilizations rise and fall depending on whether 2 people stayed married. That is power, fragile, personal, unpredictable. She gives you a small smile, almost maternal, almost. True strength, she says, is when no one notices you're the reason the world hasn't burned down yet. The moment lingers, even the clouds above seem to still. Then, somewhere behind you, Ares whispers, "So, are we not throwing things anymore?" Hera closes her eyes. "See what I deal with?" But then, as if the atmosphere has reached its limit, something shifts. You feel it before it happens, like static before a lightning strike, but colder. A kind of pressure, like the air's been holding its breath too long. And from the edge of the platform where no throne sits and no torch dares burn, something stirs. A voice, dry as dust, old as shadow. "I was not invited," it says, "and yet you speak of power. The gods go still. Even Zeus, especially Zeus. Because this isn't one of them. This is something older, something below. The mist coils like a spine. A forgotten shape rises, neither god nor mortal. And you realize, this meeting was never just about the 5 most powerful gods. It was about what happens when power draws attention. Even the kind no one wants. You don't know what it is yet, this thing that stepped into the circle, but your skin knows, your spine knows. Your instincts, the ones evolution buried under playlists and coffee cravings, scream one message: don't move. The gods are silent. That alone is terrifying. Even Ares, who could trash talk a volcano, has gone still, hands twitching toward his sword. Athena narrows her eyes, already calculating a dozen exit strategies. Zeus doesn't blink. Poseidon leans forward just slightly, the sea inside him bristling. Hades? Hades is watching, and not in a relaxed way. From the far edge of the circle, the mist pulls tighter, forming into something vaguely shaped like a figure, but shifting constantly, like it refuses to settle on a name. "I was not called," the voice repeats, a whisper that echoes with the weight of old stone. "But power summons." You whisper, "Who is that?" No one answers. The figure steps forward, no footsteps, no shadow, just motion. And the further it moves into the light, the more it seems to dim the world around it. Before there were gods, it says, there were forces, not names, not thrones, just need, hunger, silence, darkness. You feel a chill, not cold like winter, but cold like absence, like a room that remembers too many goodbyes. Power, it continues, is not owned, it is borrowed, fed, leaked through cracks. The louder it rings, the more it calls things that remember when Olympus was a whisper. Now it's close enough to see something. A face, a skull, a mask. You're not sure. It shifts. It resists identity. Hera speaks, voice clipped but steady. "You don't belong here." The figure turns its gaze toward her. "I belong wherever consequence grows fat, and this place," it says, voice curling around you like smoke, drips with it. Zeus steps forward, lightning coiling lazily in his palm. "You'll leave." The figure tilts what might be its head. "Will I?" You glance around, heart pounding. For the first time, you realize something unsettling. This being, whoever it is, doesn't want to fight. It doesn't even want to win. It just wants to witness. Like a shadow cast by too much light. Like gravity at a feast. "I watched when the Titans fell," it says. "I watched when gods drew straws and cursed their luck. I watched every war, every betrayal, every oath unkept." A beat, a breath. "I will watch again." You feel it Athena weightlifting. The thing is pulling back, dissolving, folding into itself like a closing wound. But not gone. Never gone. Just waiting. And before the mist fades completely, it says one last thing. "Your thrones are not eternal. Even mountains erode, even stars blink." Silence. Not reverent, not shocked, just aware. And when it's finally gone, no one speaks right away. It's Athena who breaks the hush. "Well," she says dryly, "that was cheerful." Zeus exhales, the storm inside him retreating. Poseidon mutters something about needing saltwater therapy. Hera straightens her robe and pretends her hands weren't clenched. You, meanwhile, are just sitting there like someone who accidentally walked into the wrong Zoom meeting and stayed because it got weirdly intense. And then, Ares laughs. Not a full belly laugh, just a sharp exhale and a grin. You know what that means, right? He says. If the old watchers are stirring, we're doing something right. Or something very, very wrong, Hades says flatly. But Zeus raises his hand not to summon power, but to pause the unraveling. This isn't the first time, he says. The shadows come when the gods grow too loud, too bright, too powerful. He looks around the circle. And we have. You sense the weight of his words. Something is building. A reckoning. Not tomorrow, not next week, but inevitable. And you? You're still here. Still listening. Still holding the thread of the story as it spins tighter. Because the gods have flexed their strength, the shadows have stirred. And now, it's time to see what happens when gods stop speaking and start acting. It starts with a whisper. Not from the gods. Not from the thing that watches. From below. From Earth. You feel it in your gut before you hear it, some deep ancient crack opening. Not a scream, a sigh. Like the world itself is tired of being quiet. And suddenly, you remember? You're human. You're the one thing in this entire divine mess that bleeds without drama, dies without applause, and still keeps crawling forward. You. And the billions like you. The gods talk of power like it's currency, like it's armor, like it's noise. But for mortals, power is survival. It's building shelter during a storm you didn't cause. It's praying to gods who rarely answer. It's holding your breath through centuries of war, famine, heartbreak, and still managing to fall in love. Why are they waking now? You whisper, the question trembling out of you before you can hold it back. It's Hades who answers, voice like stone cooling in moonlight. Because power feeds on struggle, and mortals are always struggling. You look up, and now you see what they've been hiding. The cracks in Olympus aren't just from divine arguments, they're from the weight of watching you. Zeus turns away from the sky. They used to offer prayers, he says, almost wistfully. Now they offer data, noise, scrolls, screens. He doesn't sound angry, just obsolete. They build cities, Athena adds, then systems, then illusions of control. She glances toward the horizon, but when it falls apart, they still look upward. Poseidon scoffs. When the floods come, they remember me fast enough. You almost laugh, almost. Because here's the truth no god will admit. They need you, not just for prayers. For purpose. Mortals are the mirror, the echo, the reason their stories still matter. You represent hope to Athena, devotion to Hera, fury to Ares, ambition to Zeus, depth to Hades. You're the wildfire that never quite goes out, no matter how many floods or famines or tyrants try to stomp it out. And that's why you're in the crossfire. Because true power doesn't just live in Olympus. It pulses in hospitals, battlefields, bedrooms. In a mother holding her child during air raid sirens. In a student raising her voice during a protest. In someone choosing kindness when cruelty is easier. Zeus walks closer now, not looming, just present. Do you know what makes mortals terrifying? He asks. You shake your head. They keep trying. Behind him, Athena nods. Even after failure, especially after failure. They break, Hades says, and still reach for light. You feel your chest tighten. Not from fear, but from some strange, aching pride. Because despite everything, the wars, the floods, the silence of the gods, you're still here. Still breathing. Still listening. Poseidon steps forward, arms crossed. But they're growing reckless. Fast. Loud. The kind of power that tips scales. They've forgotten balance, Hera murmurs. No, Athena corrects. They're testing it. Ares grins. Good. Let 'em fight. And for a heartbeat, it feels like the air itself is holding tension. Like Olympus is no longer a seat of observation, but a battlefield waiting to reignite. Because the gods are watching, the shadows are watching, and the mortals? They're not just surviving anymore, they're shaping. Which makes them dangerous. Which makes them worthy. And you, sitting in this circle of legends and old scars, suddenly feel like more than a spectator. You are the question they're all silently circling around. What happens when the child outgrows the parent? When belief fades but the fire remains? You don't have the answers, but neither do they. And maybe that's the point. The sky has gone still again. Not calm waiting, like it knows the story is about to shift. The gods have stepped back, their voices quieter now, their postures heavier. Even Ares has stopped fidgeting, his fingers resting on the hilt of his sword like it's the only thing keeping him grounded. Athena is the one who breaks the silence. "Do you know why we carry weapons?" she asks. You glance at her spear, sharp and flawless, leaning against her shoulder like it's always been there. "To fight?" you say, carefully. She doesn't smile, to mean something. The others begin to stir slowly, as if pulled into a conversation older than language. "Weapons aren't just tools," she continues, "they're symbols. They tell stories when words fail." She rises, walks into the center of the circle, and plants her spear into the ground with a sound that echoes far too loud for a simple clink of metal. This was forged not just for battle, she says, but to protect the idea of strategy, of order, of necessary sacrifice. Zeus nods, and you realize his hand is never far from the lightning bolt. He doesn't even need to summon it sleeps in his palm, like a dragon under skin. "This isn't lightning," he says. "It's judgment, instant, absolute, the moment when choice vanishes and only consequence remains." Poseidon steps forward next, swirling his trident like it was born with him. "3 points," he says, "3 truths. The sea takes, the sea gives, and the sea remembers." He slams it into the floor. The marble ripples. Hades doesn't speak. He simply lifts a small obsidian blade, thin as a whisper, sharp as regret. "This," he says, "never draws blood. It severs ties." You feel that one, deep in your ribs. "And Ares?" He grins, picks up his sword and flips it easily through the air like it weighs nothing. "Mine? It does one thing." He holds it up, the blade still stained with wars long buried. It ends. Then, finally Hera. She doesn't lift a weapon, she lifts her hand. And in her palm rests a ring. Small, elegant, ancient. You almost laugh until you feel its weight. That, she says, has shattered more kingdoms than Ares' blade. She looks at you, and for a second, there's no divinity in her eyes, just the tired, burning wisdom of someone who's spent eternity watching people ruin themselves with love. "These are not ornaments," she says softly. "They are anchors. They keep us gods tethered to what we were created to represent." You understand now. Every item, every weapon, every object they hold close, it isn't for show. It's a symbol of the domain they rule and the burden it carries. And suddenly, you begin to wonder, what would your symbol be? Not a sword, not a crown. Maybe a pen, maybe a photograph, maybe a scar. Because mortals carry symbols too, not glowing with power, but carved with meaning. Every keepsake tucked in a drawer, every name whispered in grief, every scar that never fully healed. Ares, surprisingly, is the one who says it aloud. Power's not just about holding a weapon, he says. It's about what you fight for. And somehow, that feels like the closest thing to truth you've heard all night. Zeus turns to you, serious now. You came here for stories, for legends, but the question is, what will you carry back? You don't answer. You're too busy trying to figure out whether the thing pulsing in your chest is fear or purpose. Because symbols aren't just tools of gods. They're torches passed down. And you, mortal that you are, might just be carrying one already. You'd think, after everything, the lightning, the ocean moods, the underworld therapy session, and a surprise visit from a shadow older than time, the gods would have earned a break. They haven't. Because now comes the part no one wants to admit. Even the mightiest gods can't do it alone. And they really, really hate that. Athena is the first to speak, voice cool as carved marble. "We need structure, a pact, something to keep us from unraveling everything we've built." Ares immediately snorts. "What we've built? You mean your rules? You'll only fight if it's strategic nonsense?" She doesn't even flinch. I mean civilization. Hera steps forward, not to interrupt, but to correct. We already had a pact. It was called trust, and every one of you treated it like an optional dinner invitation. Zeus closes his eyes for a beat, just one, but you see it fatigue. A kind of cosmic parenting exhaustion only possible when your children include war, wisdom, the sea, death, and whatever Dionysus is. We cannot keep doing this, he says, opening his eyes again. Every time balance tilts, we act surprised. Every time mortals reach a new height, we bicker over who taught them to climb. Poseidon paces. You can practically hear the tide shifting in his chest. Because there is no balance, there's only waiting for the next betrayal. Is that what you expect from us? Athena asks sharply. No, Hades answers, stepping into the light. It's what I've seen. You feel the weight of that statement. This isn't theory to him, it's record. Thousands of years of alliances forged, then shattered. Empires built on God's unity, then brought to ash by divine egos and petty grievances. And yet, they're still here, still orbiting each other like unstable moons. You realize now that Olympus isn't a fortress, it's a truce. A fragile, aching, almost. Each god represents a force, but together they are a system. Messy, petty, occasionally on fire, but still a whole. There was a time, Hera says quietly, when we stood side by side, when we knew each other's strengths, not just our flaws. Zeus nods. There was a time when fear wasn't the only thing that bound us. Ares shrugs. Fear's efficient. Hades sighs. Fear is temporary. Resentment is forever. And then, silence again. Not tense. Reflective. Like they've all wandered into a memory too soft to break. You suddenly wonder, were they ever friends? Or just comrades in a war so old they forgot how it started? Athena speaks, softer now. We don't have to agree. We just have to stand in the same direction when the world starts to tip. Poseidon chuckles without humor. And when it falls? Then we fall together, Zeus says. That lands heavy. These aren't alliances based on love or loyalty. They're based on need. The understanding that despite all the betrayals and bruised egos, the only alternative to unity is ruin. You, watching from your quiet place among them, realize something simple and terrifying. Even gods don't trust easily. Even gods need each other. And the strongest force in Olympus isn't lightning, isn't wisdom, isn't war. It's the thread that keeps them trying despite everything. A thread that might snap, or might hold. For now, it holds. But not because they promised, because they remembered. And sometimes that's enough. You've seen the thrones, the lightning throne carved from storm cloud and ego, the trident seat woven from salt and pride, the obsidian seat no one dares approach without a will in place. But now you're going to see what lies behind them. Because the gods you met? They're not just forces of nature, they're personalities. And personalities? They come with baggage. Not the Hermes kind, the emotional, cosmic, multi-century kind. It starts unexpectedly with a laugh. Not Ares, not Zeus. Hermes. You didn't even see him appear. He's just suddenly there, lounging upside down on thin air, chewing what looks suspiciously like ambrosia-flavored gum. Wow, he says, flipping right side up. This is getting heavy. No one looks particularly happy to see him. That's how you know he's telling the truth. Hermes grins at you. Welcome to Olympus Unfiltered. You've met the front row stars, but every throne's got a support team. Welcome behind the curtain. And with a snap of his fingers, you're pulled into the spaces between. It's not physical, not really, more like emotional blueprints, hidden doorways behind divine veneers. You're no longer seeing just what the gods show, you're seeing what they hide. First, Hera. In public, she's marble and poise. Behind the throne, 1,000 unanswered prayers for love. Wedding vows cracked like porcelain. The echo of loyalty weaponized and thrown back at her in the form of yet another infidelity. She carries Olympus's stability, and it hurts. Because she remembers every name Zeus whispered to someone else. And still stays. because the pantheon is built on her staying. Next, Poseidon. Behind his waves, you see doubt. The sea is power, yes, but also loneliness. An expanse too wide for comfort, too deep for rest. He lashes out because he's tired of shouting into the undertow and hearing no one shout back. He never wanted the sea. But now, he is the sea, and it won't stop pulling. Athena. Behind her throne, a library that never ends. Not a place of peace, a prison of perfection. Every plan, every move, every contingency stacked like tiles in a game she can never stop playing. She doesn't sleep. She strategizes, because if she rests, someone else might act stupid, and the world could fall apart. Again. Hades. His shadows don't come from cruelty. They come from absence. He lives where everyone ends up. No beginnings, no warmth, only echoes. Behind his throne are all the things he can't change. All the loves he never got to keep. And a kingdom full of people who never chose him, but who are now his to hold. Forever. Ares. You expect rage. But what you see behind his throne is silence. The stillness after the battle. The moment when adrenaline fades and the wounds start to sting. He doesn't fear war. He fears what comes after. He doesn't know how to live when there's nothing left to fight. So he starts new battles, just to feel alive again. And finally, Zeus. Behind his throne, maps, charts, scrolls, regret. He built Olympus, he earned the sky. But the higher the throne, the colder the air. He can't stop holding power, because the second he does, it might all collapse. He's not just holding the sky, he's holding the illusion that he's still worthy of it. And sometimes he's not sure. Hermes floats beside you, watching your face. Surprised? He asks. You nod, slowly. You didn't expect this. You didn't expect gods to be haunted. But they are. Because behind every throne isn't a monster. It's a soul. A cracked, ancient, brilliant soul burdened by eternity, choice, failure, and the terrifying weight of being needed. And maybe that's the real secret of Olympus. The gods wear crowns of gold, yes. But underneath? They're all wearing masks. There's a saying in every mortal kingdom, etched into scrolls and whispered in rebel tents. No throne lasts forever. Here, in Olympus where eternity is measured not in years but in worship, that phrase isn't just a threat. It's a prophecy. You feel it now. Not just the power of the gods, but the pressure building beneath them. Like hairline cracks in a perfect statue. Invisible at first, but growing. Zeus shifts in his seat, gaze distant. Hera is unusually quiet. And you realize they feel it too. It starts, as these things always do, with questions. Not from gods. From mortals? From bold philosophers who ask why the gods demand tribute but never offer receipts. From kings who win wars without Athena's whispers. From doctors who heal without Apollo's light. From children who don't know the names of the sky's rulers, just the names of their parents. They question. And doubt is louder than silence. You see the signs play out across Olympus like storm clouds on a sunny day. Ares hears soldiers whisper before battle not his name, but luck. Poseidon feels ships crossing his oceans without offerings, powered by engines not prayers. Athena watches leaders turn to data and algorithms instead of dreams and omens. Even Hades. Hades waits longer and longer to be remembered in funeral rites. Is this how it ends? Hera asks one night, her voice like a porcelain cup on the edge of a table. Not in war, not in rebellion, just forgetting? Zeus doesn't answer, because deep down, even he isn't sure if he's still king, or just a memory with thunder in its lungs. But gods are not the only ones who feel the shift. Something else does too. Something older than Olympus. Something that remembers the Titans. something that watched the gods rise and has been waiting patiently for them to stumble. It begins with omens. Statues cracking, temples trembling in still air, prophets waking with blood on their tongues and no idea why. The gods notice, and they start turning on each other, not with violence yet, but with suspicion. Hades vanishes for days at a time, no explanation. Poseidon sends storms at random, as if testing the world's boundaries. Athena withholds her counsel from mortals, lets them fail, just to see what happens when they no longer listen. And Ares? Ares starts sharpening his blade for no one in particular, just in case. Because deep beneath Olympus, something stirs. A force that doesn't want a seat at the table. It wants to break the table. And the gods? They're giving it all the cracks it needs. Alliances fade, patience thins, the weight of worship slips through their fingers like sand from a cracked amphora. And in the distance somewhere below or beyond, you feel the echo of a voice. A voice not yet here, but approaching. A challenger? A reckoning? Or just the sound of Olympus finally learning what it means to fall? You don't know. Not yet. But the gods look at you now not as a curiosity, not as a guest, but as a witness, because if power can be lost, if legends can rot, then you may be the only one who remembers how it all used to shine, and how it all began to crack. The sky above Olympus is calm. Too calm. Like the silence before a storm forgets it's supposed to hold back. The gods are gathered again, but this time there's no arguing, no theatrical flashes of power, no insults tossed like thunderbolts. There's only stillness, and in that stillness you feel it. The weight, not of the thrones, not of the weapons, of divinity itself. It's not golden, it's not glorious, it's not anything they show in paintings. It's heavy, suffocating, endless. Ares leans against a broken column, arms crossed, expression distant. You expect him to brag, to challenge someone to a duel just to feel useful. But instead, he mutters, "There's no end to it, you know, the war, the need for more. More enemies, more reasons, more rage." Next to him, Athena doesn't disagree. She's seated, fingers steepled under her chin, eyes sharp, but not at anyone in particular, just inward. "There is always another plan," she says softly, "another lesson to teach, another fire to prevent." You look to Poseidon. He stares into the horizon where the sky meets the sea, jaw tight. "Do you know what it's like to command the tides?" he murmurs, "and still be powerless to stop a single boat from sinking when no one bothers to look up anymore?" And then there's Hades. He doesn't speak, he doesn't need to. He simply stands in shadow, surrounded by everyone and yet completely alone, because that's the role he never chose, the burden he never set down. Zeus watches them all, watches you. His voice when it comes is quieter than lightning has any right to be. "We were not made to be loved," he says. "We were made to be needed." And that's the curse. Because the moment mortals stop needing gods, what are they? Symbols? Memories? Warnings? Even Hera, ever composed, finally breaks her silence. They worship us when they're desperate, curse us when they're not, and when they move on, they don't bury us, they replace us. Her hand goes to the base of her throat, not in vanity, but in reflex, like she's remembering a necklace that once meant something, a vow, a name whispered in a temple now torn down for a parking lot. Divinity isn't a reward, it's a weight. To be a god means carrying the worst of humanity, its violence, its chaos, its arrogancy, and pretending it doesn't crush you. To be a god means being worshipped by people who don't know your name tomorrow. To be a god means standing tall while everyone below you changes, moves forward, forgets. And you stay the same. And yet they stay. They don't flee, they don't fade. Because someone has to hold the line. Someone has to carry the myth, even when the myth gets old. And you realize they're not gods because they're invincible. They're gods because they won't stop carrying. Even when no one's watching. Even when it hurts. even when the cracks show. Especially then. Ares looks at you, not with bravado, with honesty. You want to know the truth? You nod. Sometimes, he says, I wish I could lay the sword down just once and have someone else pick it up. He looks around, not at the other gods. At you. So ask yourself, mortal, he says, what do you carry, and how long before it becomes too heavy? The silence after that isn't sad. It's sacred, because in that moment you understand. Divinity isn't glory, it's gravity. And the gods? They've been holding the sky up this whole Timino because they must. But because no one else would, the circle of gods remains. Not broken, not whole, just there. Like the last page of a book you're too afraid to close, because when you do, the story ends, and no one remembers the silence that follows. They don't look at each other now, they look at you. And suddenly, that weight, the lightning, the shadow, the salt, the steelite shifts, just slightly, onto your shoulders. Because this story has always needed a witness. Not a follower, not a worshipper, a witness. You came here looking for legends, but what you found were echoes. Bruised truths wrapped in thunder and gold. You saw gods, and you saw what it costs to remain one. Zeus steps toward you, not as a king, but as a man who once dared to claim the sky. There will come a time, he says, when they won't remember our names. Athena joins him, but they will still live by our choices. Poseidon's voice is a rumble. They'll sail oceans we never touched. Hades nods. They'll cross thresholds we never guarded. Hera steps forward, and love in ways we could never understand. Ares? He shrugs, and fight like hell when it matters. You feel it now, not awe. Responsibility. Because the gods don't pass their power to the next generation. They pass their story, and it's yours now, to carry, to question, to remember. Not because they need belief, but because without a witness, even gods become myths, and myths become dust. Your breath catches, the wind shifts. The stars above Olympus blink slower as if they too are watching. And then, Hera turns, motioning to the others. One by one, the gods step back, not into darkness, but into something deeper. The space between memory and silence, where stories rest, where thunder sleeps, where old names wait to be whispered again. Zeus is the last to leave. He looks at you not as a god, but as a father might look at the last child awake at the end of the world. And then he's gone. Only you remain. The silence returns, but this time it's gentle. And you understand? The story doesn't end here. It rests here, until someone else picks it up. Until someone else dares to ask, what were the gods like? And somewhere across time, across myth, across wonder, you'll know the answer. Because you were there. You saw them break. You saw them hold. You saw them carry. And now you carry it too. So close your eyes. Let the weight drift. Let the echo fade. The stars will keep watch now. You've done your part. You were the witness. End of story. Sweet dreams.